Some call me Steve, Dad, husband, or friend. Others might call me boss, coach, or mentor. Today, you can call me the Leadership Hacker. Thanks for listening in. I really appreciate it. My job as the Leadership Hacker is to hack into the minds, experiences, habits, and learning of great leaders, C-suite executives, authors, and development experts so that I can assist you developing your understanding and awareness of leadership. I'm Steve Rush, and I'm your host today. I'm the author of Leadership Cake. I'm a transformation consultant and leadership coach, and can't wait to start sharing all things leadership with you. Our special guest on today's show is Nick Cavuoto. He's a speaker, an entrepreneur mentor, and human potential expert who specializes in deep coaching, personal branding, and transformational leadership. But before we get a chance to speak with Nick, it's a Leadership Hacking News. It was Stephen R. Covey who most famously quoted in his habit number 5, "Seek first to understand, then be understood." And I'm sure that any leader listening to this would subscribe to that. But what if your team were not humans, but primates? Well, that's exactly what we're exploring in some light-hearted news today, understanding what some leaders did in a research facility in Finland. Monkeys in a zoo in Finland have shown significant preference for traffic sound over their native, natural jungle noises, researchers have found. A tunnel filled with sensors was installed in a monkey enclosure in Korkeisari Zoo in Helsinki. This allowed the white-faced Saki monkeys to choose whether they listened to a playlist of traffic noises, natural and nature sounds, and rainfall, and also had a choice of Zen music and dance music. Dr. Elena Hersky-Douglas, a researcher at Aalto University in Finland, said, "We thought they would much more enjoy the calming sound of Zen music, but they were actually triggered by more traffic sounds." The traffic playlist actually came out as most popular choice amongst the monkeys, who were also grooming themselves and getting excited as the sounds of traffic were passing by. Kirsi Painanen, the zoo research coordinator, said the sounds of the road music mimicked in some ways the natural way they communicate. She said in the wild the animals use high-pitched hissing, squeaking and croaking noise to stay in contact, indicating that they may hear those similar noise sounds in traffic too. The research was an experiment to understand the characteristics of primates as part of the technology that can be used to improve the well-being of animals in captivity. And according to the researchers, this is the first time the sound experiment has been completed in a full controlled environment, and they hope that the findings will lead to understanding how to stimulate and positively influence the environment in enclosures in the future. The long-term plan is that one day they have an ambition that the animals could actually control their own lighting, temperature and sounds in their own environment. And the technology is very much open, and they're looking at ways in which they can start to bridge into that area. But first started with understanding what was most important to them. As part of the next step in the research, the team are planning to install screens with tunnels for monkeys to watch and explore their visual environment too. And despite popular belief, they do not eat bananas. Instead, they feed on seeds, nuts and insects and some fruits. And no monkeys were harmed in the experiment. That's been the Leadership Hacker News. If you do have any news, stories or interesting facts that you'd love our listeners to hear, please get in touch with us. Nick Cavuoto is our special guest on today's show. He's a high-performance business coach, an entrepreneur mentor who focuses on mindset, personal brand, and human experiences, as well as leadership transformation. Nick, welcome to the Leadership Hacker podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So delighted we got you on the show. You've got some really interesting stories and great perspectives on the world, but your life didn't start out in the way that you have landed, right? So you started out as a church pastor. Tell us a little bit about the journey from church pastor to entrepreneur transformation expert.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you. It's a pretty wild, shift going from essentially being in the nonprofit world and being in a sector of where you're really focused on human potential and transformation. And the channel or the angle that's used to do that is through spirituality. And so it's interesting. A lot of people kind of do it the opposite way, right? Of where they, build a great business and do all these great things. And then they get into, philanthropy work or whatever it may be in order for them to really contribute and give back. But early on in life, my situation was just unique, and when I got into my career path, by that time I had failed out of college twice. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And so I said, well, I might as well, show up and serve and help others. And I'm so grateful that I did that. I really got into the people business. It's arguable that, as far as my peers, I understand humans more than probably 99% of people, because I've been exposed to high levels of whether it's trauma in people's life or, the deeper desires that are in their heart, the things they really want to accomplish in life, and also the complexities of relationships and complexities of calling, or what do I want to accomplish? What's my purpose? Those conversations for me, it happened in my early 20s all the way through my mid to late 20s. And just to give you context, I was coaching people on divorce when I was 24 years old with parents who were 30 years happily married. So I was exposed to a lot of learning and a lot of experiences when it came to individuals and the way they see the world and the way that they want to really position themselves for greatness. And I'll just mention that it was a wild ride, and I learned a lot, learned just a tremendous amount about really what makes people tick. And that's just been the greatest contribution.
It's an awesome induction into the world of human beings, isn't it? Because you're getting taken into an environment that most people just wouldn't experience at a very young age, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I was raised in the church. My father was a drug dealer until he was about 30 years old. And just had a life-changing experience of where he just made a massive shift in his life and said, I'm going to do things the right way now. And that was really the catalytic shift for us. I mean, honestly, at 3 years old, I remember being, underneath a pew, waking up, and these are like church revival, things happening at midnight. So yeah. It's like one of those things where I, just had these experiences and was just part of really an incredible movement, which really helped me when I shifted things into the business world, because then when it came to marketing, I understood how people think, how people feel. I understood Maslow's. I understood how the ascension happens from people who are foundationally, just looking for the basic core needs of life, all the way to the point of self-actualization, of not really caring about what people think or say about you, but living out your truth in the present. And that was just an amazing, part of the first, 3 decades of my life that I was able to see. And so I'm incredibly grateful. And the way that translated into business was post, ministry. I ended up working for startups, and then I went from startups into Fortune 500 in corporate America. And from there, just went on to building my own businesses. And, my father was an entrepreneur to the truest sense in some ways. And my grandfather also owned several businesses, and his father was a farmer in the States. So we have over 100 years of entrepreneurship in our bloodline. And my mother's been an entrepreneur for the last 30 years or so as well. So it's cool that I've just had this legacy of entrepreneurship and also human potential that have consistently showed up in my life over and over and over again.
It's an awesome experience. And I guess having that to draw upon gives you almost the unconscious permissions to almost do anything and try anything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Which, of course, is the key tenet, isn't it, of entrepreneurialism. It's that whole ability that nothing's too great and nothing's too big.
Yeah, 100%, man. At 5 years old, I almost drowned in a pool, which allowed me to confront my greatest fear very early on in life. And when that situation happened, it's one of those things where when you're fighting for your life at such a young age, and then you go in the opposite direction, and understand the power of fear, none of us really understand our own superpower until we can see it used for good and for evil.
Yeah.
Just think of Star Wars, right? It's a great example, but like how using the Force, right? It can be used in a good way or in a bad way.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the same thing, that I see showing up in business and for people is like, there's this polarization of like what's possible for us, but also what can cripple us. And that's been one of the things that I've just always attributed to a lot of the success that I've started to experience has been through being able to confront my greatest fear at such a young age. And by 12, I actually just confronted it and got over it. And actually, my grandmother's from Colchester. And so, she was a war bride. She married my grandfather during World War II and came back to the States. And she didn't really have a temperament for weak thinking because of all that she had been through. And so she was the one who actually helped me overcome my greatest fear, which now is attributed to a massive part of what I believe, again, is just my ability to show up in the world in such a powerful way.
Super. Love that story. Thanks for sharing that.
Certainly.
It hasn't always been glory for you. So you were at a stage in your entrepreneurial life where things were going really well. You were drawing down $150,000 a month, and then stuff went wrong to the point where you couldn't even afford a $30 meal. Tell us a little bit about how that happened and how you bounced back.
Certainly, man. So alignment is the big key here. You can go build a business. I built a nearly $2 million business on accident. Okay. And I don't mention that a lot, meaning, a lot of people are like, oh, so what'd you do to have great success? And I'm like, I like to actually talk about my failures. There's a lot more to learn there. But I was somewhat of an accidental entrepreneur. When I left ministry, I didn't have a degree. I had forsaken university in order to really focus on ministry. And so I had to kind of retool the whole map and re-strategize around what I wanted to do and how I wanted to, find significance and how I wanted to really show up in the world. And so I built this amazing company really, really fast. In less than 18 months, we quadrupled the company. I had a few friends who were working for me, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but always the question was around growth. What are we going to do to grow to the next stage? Who do we need to hire? What consultants do we need to find? And that was really what our ideal, kind of scenario was. Man, you build a company and you're hiring growth consultants right out of the gate because it's just like, when it rains, you accept it, the harvest that comes after.
Yeah.
And so we planted the seeds and the rain came and it worked. And for me, I fell out of alignment. I fell out of really what I felt like I was supposed to do in life. And that's one way that life will kind of, I say it this way, God will either, he'll poke you, then he'll push you, then he'll prod you, then he'll punch you. And that's kind of what I experienced in life, where I got punched because I was not where I was supposed to be. And I did know that deep down. I'm like, running an agency, a marketing agency for the rest of my life is not going to be the thing. So I made a decision, to close down that business. But yeah, when you're running at that high of a run rate and you have a huge team and all these things are happening, it just takes like one small thing, that 1% shift, that one loss of focus to really bring the whole thing down. And that's what happened. It's a fracture in relationship with one of the guys who started with me about 2 to 3 years after I had gotten going. I hired a guy, 25 years I'd known him for. He's one of my best friends, and hired him really to take over operationally different parts of the business. And there was a fracture in our relationship, unfortunately. He wanted to be in a different position than where he played best. It's like in soccer, or in football, if you're an amazing goalie and you play well with your hands and you're the slowest guy in the team, you probably should not be at the front of the pack playing striker. And that's kind of the situation. Or in basketball, if you're 5'6", you probably don't play center. So that's kind of what was happening. I'm like, listen, man, you're really good in this position at point guard because of your height, your agility, your quickness. But like going in this position is probably not the best idea for you. You're going to be playing against guys who are 7 feet tall, and it's just not the same. It's not just the same paradigm. And unfortunately, because of that, he actually ended up leaving the company, stealing the client list, undercutting our services, selling against our services at half cost, took the leads list, everything I had spent, 100 hours a week developing. And honestly, I'm not even kidding you. I was, married. I was full-time in school. I was full-time working. I was part-time working for the first 2.5 years of my business when I was developing it. So when I say that I've put in the work, a lot of people don't do it to that level. Oh, and we had a kid, by the way, in that time frame as well. A lot of people don't put in what's truly required. They'll be like, yeah, I work 80 hours a week, and you assess it and it's like 42. I was really putting in the time to build the business in the right way. And unfortunately, because of that fracture, it was actually the greatest blessing. And I really, it stinks I lost the relationship with him. And that's something that that's always been hard because he's just such a great friend. But in reality, looking back, it was the thing that launched me into my current state. And I'm just so grateful for it.
Like you said, you learn more from when things go wrong than sometimes from when they go well. And relationships is now a core foundation of the work you do. And we're going to get onto that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But for those folks listening, and just give us maybe a flavor of some of the work that you currently focus on.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I coach high achieving entrepreneurs, and I help them develop an unshakable core. That's the big idea. So there's these skills that are required, there's beliefs, there's accountability, there's mentorship, and there's also specific practices that are required to empower what I believe is a resilient life. And that just boils down to the big idea that I believe that we all have a mandate. We all have a mandate. And what that is it's It's a purpose with a calling. And it has some level of spiritual significance to it, of where you've got to feel like we're here for a reason, that we didn't just evolve from a salamander and just turn into who we are today, but that there's actually intent and purpose behind your life. And I just think for myself, and it's in my own humble opinion, that that's the way that things operate. So whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an executive, you're a high level professional expert, the one thing that I know that ties us all together is the desire to have more influence and impact. And yeah, the income stuff, that's important too. But what I've found is through the acceleration of entrepreneurs, of helping them get to the highest level of success, when I go into deep coaching, which is like inner work on the inside of them and really start finding things out, income is just a feedback loop that says that they're doing a great job.
Right. Yeah.
It's really not the central focus of what they do, although they might want to grow a great business and have a lot of resources. It's really not the core thing. And that's why I don't include it in the big idea.
I guess income's a byproduct as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. 100%. And so when we get into like the personal branding and marketing side of things, that's another pillar, as well as high performance functionality. I try to get people out of their head and into their heart, into their gut, so that they can start making decisions from an intuitive state, which a lot of times I tell people, you already have all the answers that you need. And in fact, you have all the resources around you through your relationships with the people around you. It's just that you don't see it that way. There's an old Asian proverb that says that if you chase two rabbits, you catch none.
I love that.
And that's the big idea. People are chasing all these different things. I want this, I want that, I want the lifestyle, I want the money, I want the influence. You actually have to switch that entire engagement. If you ever seen a stray cat and you have some food for that stray cat you want to give it, all you have to do is bend down on your knee and summon the cat. And that's exactly the way that we need to show up in entrepreneurship, is we actually need to bring forth the things that need to be present in our lives versus feeling like we're always on this quest to chase the next thing.
And I love the fact that you mentioned you coach people from an intuitive state. My role as a coach, I often get people to pay attention to their intuition, because for me, it's their kind of uncoded, unconscious messaging that's already there. How do you really tap into that intuition and get people to rely on it?
Well, first of all, I try to get people into a state of, there's a lot of different philosophies out there in the world, but I try to get people in the state of following what Nikola Tesla says. He's just one of my heroes. He's an incredible guy. And I think his teachings are just so powerful. And he said this, he said, if you wish to understand the universe, think in the terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I'm going to say it one more time. If you wish to understand the universe, think in the terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And what I see as energy is like the way of being. It's like reading a room. EQ is another way to describe energy. I think, again, if I'm keeping this like super one-on-one.
Yeah.
Another way, frequency, is through what we hear, right? So frequency has to do with what we're tuning into and how we're positioned. And if we're, vibrating at a high state, so in vibration, the high state vibration, I think of cell towers, 5G. They're shorter, limited bandwidths, right? So there's more intensity over a smaller distance. Versus if you're on satellite, they're longer wavelengths that go over longer stretches of time and space. And so these are the things that we want to be thinking about. So when it comes to intuition, I'm going like, how's your energy? What are your drainers? What are your drivers? What's suffocating you? What are you around? What's your environment? A lot of times we can make these small shifts and it can start changing everything. The way that someone thinks is what ends up becoming, right? The big idea of like what you focus on grows.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I tell people all the time, if you're in a position right now of where you're in a season that's changing, change is hard. Now, if you're also growing, growth is hard. But the hardest thing you'll ever have to do in your life is being stuck somewhere that you're not supposed to be. So when I try to unlock people and get them out of a position of where they're feeling constriction or where they're feeling frustrated or where they're feeling like, why me? What's going on in my life? Or if they want to grow, honestly, some people come to me and they're like, things are going really well. I just want to go higher. It's like I have the blueprint that helps them go from, let's say, a solo entrepreneur from 20 to 100K a month. And some of them have been able to do that literally in the matter of 14 days. And it's a shift. There's a shift that has to happen in the way that they're seen. And the greatest contribution that I have as a coach is to being a mirror.
Yeah.
I just reflect back to them what they already know to be true.
You apply another level of thinking and lens on this. So you're quite big on metaphysics. those folks are not sure what metaphysics are, just tell us a little bit about what metaphysics are, but how you use it specifically.
Yeah, well, certainly it's the core thesis that I talked about with Tesla just a moment ago. But I think it might be easier to grab this conceptually if we think in the terms of movies. Okay, so go here with me for a minute. If we combine The Matrix with Avatar and Interstellar, just to name a few, this can kind of give us a visual concept of how we exist interdimensionally. Stranger Things is also another way to look at this if you're a big Netflix fan. We're mixing the past and the present and the future. We're mixing awareness from consciousness, so what we're consciously aware of versus the things that we don't see. And then also the idea that we are all connected, that we're all connected to one another and everything around us is connected as well. And through that big idea, there's an extension of this vastness of like, oh my goodness, there's just like, we are just this blue inky dot on this huge map. And there's so much more around us. So that's really the big idea. Is like, if you go watch those movies and look for the underlying big ideas when it comes to, how we can exist in different levels. Another way to explain this part of interdimensionality or, kind of like these higher levels of consciousness is that, it's said that, most people operate at a 3D consciousness. So it's kind of the level playing field for humanity. When you go up to, let's say, a 5D level, this is where you might have quantum experiences. And so a lot of people who have seen things supernaturally, maybe you've experienced something supernaturally, something that's just completely out of the ordinary. That's just the big idea of, that there's more around us than what we see. The Sixth Sense, right? There's another way to see it through that movie. There's so many different illustrations, but
where's the best place for me to start tapping into that level of consciousness?
Well, honestly, I think it starts with the inner work. I didn't start really learning about this larger concept until I got into therapy for myself. And, that might sound crazy. Like, okay, so now this guy's a quack using therapy. Not at all. I think I'm committed to the highest version of who I am. I'm doing the inner work now because in 5 to 7 years, when I show up on the biggest stages in the world, I want to make sure I'm good, that I don't lose my marriage in the process, that I don't lose my kids in the process. I'm doing it as a defense play. And that's the bigger idea around what this whole thing really bakes out to, is that when you start seeing more, there's more to address. And so when I was going through the process of saying, I want to advance the way that I show up in the world, metaphysics was one of those things that just helped me understand spirituality at a greater level. There's a scripture that talks about this big idea around basically that we do not fight against things here in a 3D reality, but we're fighting against things in a 5D reality. And so when you think about, the concept of angels or, even forces of darkness and all these different things. Again, just put it in the context of Star Wars and it's acceptable as a metaphor. But really, I started to feel like, I saw people who were afflicted by things that just didn't seem normal when I was a kid and also when I was in ministry. I saw people who were afflicted by things spiritually. And what I understood was that there's more to this picture than what we see. There's more to the collective ability of how we think and feel than what we see. And that's what allowed me to go to that higher level of saying there's got to be something more. So, I would just look at, taking the first step of just starting, like get on YouTube and start learning about this. And there's one thing that I want to mention as you start watching or consuming or learning around these concepts. So as long as you judge, you cannot learn.
Like wise words. Yeah.
So if you are looking at a situation or watching somebody or even listening to me and you are in judgment, you'll learn nothing. And it just will delay the process of you getting to the next level. So that's up to you, but I'll just give you that key. It's a total master key to so much in life. If you're in a mode of judgment, you cannot learn and you cannot find the greater things that are in life through judgment, only through curiosity.
I love that. In fact, I'm going to write it down and I will quote you. I love it. So you're big on relationships, having spent so much time studying them, coaching them, and supporting people through different relationship lenses. You have this great mantra, which I love, called relationships are rocket ships. So I'd love to learn, how did the mantra come about and how do you use it?
I was in a mastermind in San Diego, in California, and I remember this was at the end of, in the fall of 2019, so about a year ago. And I was sitting around all these incredible people that for the previous 32 years of my life, I didn't know. And there was more growth in the matter of, 60 to 90 days through this mastermind group than there was ever in my life. Like that period of time was so accelerated. And I just look around and I'm like, man, relationships are rocket ships. I just remember saying it to the group and they're all like, whoa, tell me more. So the idea was that, when you get around the right people and you spend time with people who truly want to see you succeed, it's not about competition, it's about collaboration. That you get around people who understand you, who are willing to speak life into you, people who are willing to put you on their stages. My mentor and my business coach, Mike Kim, he runs the largest personal brand podcast called Brand You with Mike Kim. And just phenomenal human being. I've known him for the last decade or so. He put me in front of some of the most prominent people in the internet marketing space and also in the leadership space with John Maxwell, with Todd Herman, who wrote The Alter Ego, Billy Jean, who's a huge paid media and agency owner, and he's done a lot of incredible things in internet marketing, as well as Chris Ducker from Youpreneur in the UK. He just connected me to all these people, and I walked away, from an opportunity at a live event with over $100,000 in proposals that were out from like 2 or 3 days. And it was like serving the moment that I was in, because at that season of my life, I was really thinking about coaching, but for that season, that second half of 2019, I was also doing a lot of content production because content is one of my superpowers. And so video content production. So right. It was just amazing that when you get around the right people, the right things happen. And it will launch you into a totally different stratosphere of the people that you're connected to, who they're connected to, and how you can achieve what you want faster, but yet with integrity. And that's the big idea on relationships or rocket ships. And that's how it happened.
That's neat. Love it. So this part of the show, we're going to turn the leadership lens on you. And I'm going to hack into your leadership mind and start to drag out some lessons that we can share with our listeners. First place I'd like to go with you, Nick, is for you to share with us your top 3 leadership hacks.
Yeah, man. Number 1, find a mentor. I have 5 coaches in my life right now. And I'll tell you, it's been the best investment that I've ever made in my life. Find a mentor, find a business coach, and someone who can lead you to where they are. It's not ethereal. It needs to be practical, but you need to be supported in a very real way. So that's number 1, find a mentor. Number 2, never lie. Never lie. This is one of my, golden principles around personal branding, is to never not tell the truth.
Yep.
Because it will always come back.
Totally.
Now, of course, our parents, they teach us, don't lie, tell the truth, all these things. But in business, it has the ability to, in a microsecond, destroy your entire empire if you have one, or enough to take you out because you realize that you have a lack of integrity, and those who are advancing their level of awareness will increase the level of responsibility in the way they show up in the world, which then requires communication to say, I screwed up. Yep. It also fuels imposter syndrome. So it's incredibly important to never lie. And then the last one is to give unconditionally. I live a life to be a gift to humanity. That is my entire thesis on why I'm here, is to be a gift for a small 1% shift in people's lives. And I for me, I could be in a room of 10,000 people and I care about one person. It's just whoever needs it the most that day. And I focus on that. And, I think that what you focus on grows, and the ability to double down on just one individual that I can lock eyes with, if it's a live event or if it's an experience or just a conversation, someone I can show up for and just give unconditionally and look for ways to give, look for ways to pay it forward. I think it's one of the most abundant universal principles. It's the ultimate boomerang of being able to give unconditionally without expectation, yet it's a way of being, not a way of doing. So it's a way of being, which is like that's the way that I show up in the world. And if you do it to get, it won't work. If you do it because that's who you are and it's just how you handle life, then just get ready for the rewards to come your way.
The last one you talk about is really significant, because I hear many people talk about something very similar. But how do you really step away from giving and providing insights, information, versus I am 100% in that giving and gifting space.
It is through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you realize that you don't need anything from anyone, that's when the game shifts. Because you're enslaved to whoever you need something from. If you need love, then you're enslaved to your partner. If you need money, then you're enslaved to your clients or prospective clients or to your marketing strategy. If you need acceptance, then you are enslaved to your community or wherever you find belonging. So once you realize that standing on your own 2 feet is all that's required, and the only thing that you need is your own clear connection with yourself and with your source, that's the big shift. I mean, I'm accelerating to the highest level, but in reality, that's it. And a simple way to take a first step in that is to give the thing that you need the most right now. So if you need money, go give someone else money, because it's going to hurt a little bit. Don't get me wrong. But the shift that happens in you, that's what needs to happen. The laws are universal, and that's what everything is run by. The idea of reciprocity, it's a universal law.
Yeah.
What you reap is what you sow. So I would tell somebody who's in a situation right now who's in a situation where they're stuck or frustrated or feeling like, man, I'd love to give, but I don't have anything to give. Do you have a smile? Do you have a handshake? Do you have a phone where you could call someone and just encourage them? If you feel downtrodden, if you feel frustrated, that's what I'm talking about.
It's amazing. Love it. The next part of the show we call Hack to Attack. So this is where something in your life or your work hasn't gone as we intended. Maybe it's even gone completely south. But as a result of the experience, though, we've now used it in our life and our work as a positive. What would be your hack to attack?
Well, I think the whole idea around going from running a $150,000 a month business to not being able to afford a $30 meal, that big concept has probably been the biggest hack that's happened in my career.
Yeah.
And so there's a totally different way now of how I view money. I think money is the consequence of doing what you love well. And there's also energy around money, meaning it likes to go into places where it has consistency, safety, and where it also has flow, like water, like a river. It has to have movement. Otherwise, there's stagnation. What's a stagnated river? It's a swamp. And so money has to always be shifting and moving around. And I think I got into a place when things started going south with the business of where I started holding on very tightly. I constricted my energy, which caused the river to stop flowing, which caused the money to stop flowing. So I would say that that's been the greatest lesson, because the way that I show up now, I mean, this year for our coaching programs, the first time we launched our core coaching program, we did over 6 figures in sales in less than 5 days. So there's a high level of understanding of what was broken before will not stay broken in the future. And the way that we view resources, or the continuum of resources and how they come in and out, has a lot more to do with stewardship than your ability to sell. So I would say steward what you have well. Keep your hands open. Better is an open hand than a closed fist. That's the big hack to attack.
I suppose it's also just trying to resist the natural learned behaviors we have in times of pressure, right? And going with that flow that you talked about.
Absolutely. And it also has a lot to do with not judging yourself. I'm pretty self-critical. You probably wouldn't hear it from this conversation, but again, darkness and the dark and the light, right? So the reason why I'm so optimistic is because I've been so hard on myself in the past.
Yeah.
The reason why I see that there's endless opportunities are because I felt defeated to the point of there's no way out of this situation. So yeah, 100%. I mean, it's based on these experiences that typically the hardest things in your life, me sitting across from this dude and getting my card declined at a diner, that's one of those experiences where you go like, this is never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And what do I need to do to ensure that reality is true? And so, yeah, your greatest victory is definitely in a place of, where you've also had a grand defeat.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is. And the last thing we want to do with you, Nick, is to send you on a bit of time travel. So you get to go back and give yourself some advice when you were 21 now. So what's your advice to Nick at 21?
Honestly, just keep going. Just keep going. There's another way that I would frame that as you're asking it, and it would be, you've already won. I think that I'm just living a life where I'm catching up to a spot that I think is this, place of like achievement. And the thing that I've really tried to remind myself of is that I've already won, that like the battle's already over, the trophy's already been handed out, or the hill has been conquered, and I've already won. And so just play like you've already won, and that'd be my advice to myself for sure.
Very neat. So for folk listening to this today, I suspect they're thinking to themselves, how do I get to find out a bit more about Nick's work? Where is his website, and how can I connect with him? Where would you like us to send them when we're done? Yeah,
so you can check out my website, nickcavuoto.com. That's NICKCAV as in victory, UOTO.com. And also on Instagram, and it's just my name as well. So check those out. I'm on Facebook. I have a 7-figure mentors group on Facebook, so you can check that out as well. But primarily, check out my website. You can get everything from there. And then certainly, if you have any questions or you want to hit me up on Instagram, I was just on Entrepreneurs on Fire a couple weeks ago. And my goodness, I've gotten hundreds of messages, and it's been a lot of fun to be able to collaborate and hop on calls with people and just learn their stories. So yeah, that's the big idea there. So connect with me on Instagram. I'd love to connect with you.
Great stuff. And we'll also put those links in our show notes, Nick. So when people have finished listening to this, they can head straight over and connect with you there.
Epic.
From my perspective, I just wanted to say, we've spoken a few times now, Nick, and every time I speak with you, I just get this rush of energy. So whatever you're doing is working, and I'm feeling that, today. So thank you for being part of our journey on the Leadership Hacker podcast.
Steve, it's my absolute pleasure, man. Appreciate you so much, brother.
Thank you very much, Nick. I genuinely want to say a heartfelt thanks for taking time out of your day to listen in too. We do this in the service of helping others and spreading the word of leadership. Without you listening in, there would be no show. So please subscribe now if you haven't done so already. Share this podcast with your communities and network, and help us develop a community and a tribe of leadership hackers. And finally, if you'd like me to work with your senior team, your leadership community, keynote an event, or you would like to sponsor an episode, please connect with us via our social media. And you can do that by following and liking our pages on Twitter and Facebook. Our handle there is @LeadershipHacker. Instagram, you can find us there at @the_leadership_hacker. And at YouTube, we're just Leadership Hacker. So that's me signing off. I'm Steve Rush, and I've been the Leadership Hacker.